Now, Vladimir Zelensky wasn't the only high-profile guest at the Arab League summit.
Prison system, one of more than 130,000 forcibly disappeared.
Now, Vladimir Zelensky wasn't the only high-profile guest at the Arab League summit.
Years, they should have, held him accountable for the war crimes he's committed, for the war crimes that he is, most importantly, for the war crimes he is still committing.
Bringing Bashar al-Assad back into the regional fold, Arab leaders argue, is for stability in the Middle East, is for an end to a refugee burden its neighbors say they no longer can bear. Those who survived his brutal battle for survival now face a new Middle East, a new reality where they fear they may be forced back to the horrors of Assad's regime.
It's a monstrous regime in every sense of the word. We heard from many detainees what they went through. I'm from Idlib, where he used chemical weapons and banned weaponry against us.
27-year-old Nabil al-Uthman is a former rebel, now an activist. Like millions of other Syrians, he found safety in Turkey. But with anti-immigrant sentiments on the rise and the fate of Syrian refugees now at the heart of the country's political debate, Syrians feel their safe space is shrinking.
Even if the whole world...
Now, Vladimir Zelensky wasn't the only high-profile guest at the Arab League summit.
They begged the world to end their nightmare. But they were left to face it all alone, and now face a world where their oppressor got away with it.
I think that instead of welcoming Assad to Riyadh, I think he should be welcomed to the ICC. There is still this hope that my father will be free. I might be able to save.
Now, Vladimir Zelensky wasn't the only high-profile guest at the Arab League summit.
Come on CNN. More calls for change in Serbia following 2 mass shootings there. A live report on the latest anti-government protests. And in the midst of one of the most dense jungles on Earth, search and rescue workers think they may have found a clue that could lead them to 4 missing children.
I'm CNN meteorologist Chad Myers with your Copernicus climate change update for April of 2023. April 2023 globally was the 4th warmest April on record since pre-industrial levels. In fact, 1.2 degrees C above where we were pre-industrial.
Now, Vladimir Zelensky wasn't the only high-profile guest at the Arab League summit.
When it's all sunshine, it doesn't rain, and then you get to be the warmest on record. There's some warm spots across the globe ocean-wise too. A developing El Nino here in the Pacific, and a warm area here where some typhoons could start to spin quite soon.
Julia Roberts has landed in Geneva and is naturally the centre of attention. She's here as Chopard's new global ambassador with a serious message to send. Because beyond the bling, the jeweller's pledge on green issues persuaded her to join.
I mean, I have 3 kids. If I'm going to work with a company, I want to work with a company who really is looking at the future in a really cool way. Right now, it really, in a lot of ways, is the only issue, because if we don't find ways to sustain ourselves, disaster. So I think it's really commendable and impressive and innovative for a brand, particularly like Chopard, to really pioneer this idea of sustainability in a really clever way.
We're back in Serbia, where thousands are protesting once again against the government in the wake of 2 mass shootings. Now, these are live pictures you can see on your screen here coming to us from Belgrade, the capital city. Thousands have clearly turned out. Opposition-led protesters are demanding the resignation of several government ministers and licenses revoked from TV stations they blame for Serbia's culture of violence. The mass shootings earlier this month left 18 people dead. Well, CNN's Scott McLean joins us now to discuss this. And Scott, in the wake of these shootings, we know that the government already moved to crack down on gun ownership, to strengthen gun laws. So why are we seeing this number of people still showing anger on the streets? What more do they want?
Yeah, clearly this is not just about guns. Some of the things that you mentioned, they're looking for resignations, they're looking for clampdowns on media, some media that they, or some television programs that they say promotes violence as well. This has really sort of morphed into something much different than we saw in the initial aftermath, when we saw vigils for these young people and children, in some cases, who were killed in these 2 mass shootings, which took place in just a less than 48-hour period of time and really shocked the country. And so people were looking for someone or something to blame. And so there were discussions about the influence of media, social media, and of course about guns. The guns problem on its own is extremely tricky to solve. You're talking about a country which has one of the highest rates of gun ownership in the world. You're talking about 2.7 million guns in Serbia. Less than half of them are owned illegally. You have a whole tranche of guns that are illegally owned, left over from conflict in the 1990s. And now you have people occupying 2 of the main bridges in Belgrade, essentially connecting the old and the new parts of the city. And, you know, one speaker who spoke in front of the parliament earlier during this protest said that, look, they want to shut down the city. They want to sort of bring things to a standstill because they think that Serbia needs to stop in order for them to get the demands that they actually want.
And to that point of it having one of the highest gun rates in the world, we know that after these shootings, there was an amnesty called for these a gun program for guns to be returned, a gun program, essentially. How has that gone in the weeks since?
It is a heck of an uphill battle. I mentioned the numbers to you already, and the numbers of guns turned in may seem like a lot, 15,000, but truly this is a drop in the bucket considering we're talking about, you know, more than 1 million guns some estimates have that are still floating around there. People even turned in hand grenades, you know, explosive devices, 2,500 of those. I mean, the amount of weaponry in this country is really astounding. This amnesty period is just for a 1-month period. After that, the government says that there's going to be much harsher penalties for people who still have these kind of weapons. Some people have them to hunt. Some people have them for sport, for skeet shooting, that kind of a thing. But there is also plenty of skeptics who say that this is going to be a very tough problem to crack down on, considering Serbia also has one of the highest one of the most biggest problems with organized crime in the world as well. And so people are not always going to give these guns up very willingly.
And why people would need hand grenades, I guess, is a separate issue. Scott, thank you for breaking that down. All right, still to come tonight, artificial intelligence can manipulate public opinion, impersonate politics, and share potentially dangerous misinformation. We'll look at what being done to regulate the growing industry next. Plus, CNN has exclusive reporting on internal FAA documents shedding new lights on last summer's air travel fiasco in the US. What they show about the agency's role in the flight disruptions.
Steve, qual é o plano? Our first stop, Bosphorus. Second stop, Karakoy.
Teşekkürler.
Thank you. Next stop, Galata. And finally, the final.
Football is more than a game. Istanbul is more than a final.
Innovative, futuristic, solutions that have the potential to really change our world.
This is a fiber discovery platform where we can follow nature's blueprints for an array of properties.
Meet the scientists spearheading these inspiring ideas.
Carbon dioxide removal will be the new heavy industry that mankind has to develop.
And see how the impact of a single solution could spark a technological transformation. Bold Pursuits, Sunday on CNN.
I've never done the cable car before. I guess this isn't the time to tell you I'm scared of heights. Oh, look at it. Spectacular. Oh, I love staying here just looking at the view. There's only one problem. The floor keeps moving. Oh my God. Coming into land, Captain. Reverse thrust. That was more excitement than humans should be allowed. And this, as they say, is the money shot. Oh my goodness. Whoa. Coming up the cable car might be the obvious thing to do, but it's a perfect starting point because now I can really understand the geography of Cape Town in all its glory and beauty.
This is CNN. More people get their news from CNN than any other news source.
At the G7, there's at least one topic world leaders can agree on. Artificial intelligence needs regulating. UK Prime Minister Rishi Sunak is leading the charge. He says AI could benefit society, but it's important to put, quote, guardrails in place. And the tech world is actually begging to be regulated on this issue. Testifying before Congress Tuesday in Washington, tech experts laid bare some of the risks and emphasized why it's important to regulate now.
We acted too slowly with social media. Many unfortunate decisions got locked in with lasting consequence. The choices we make now will have lasting effects for decades, maybe even centuries.
Well, Professor Gary Marcus, who you saw there, self-described critic of AI hype, joining me now to discuss this further, the risks of AI. Gary, thank you so much for your time. I know that 4 days ago you were there testifying to the Senate Judiciary Committee for over 3 hours alongside OpenAI Sam Altman. And there seemed to be, Gary, a really urgent consensus that regulation needed to happen, but that perhaps the US government are not best equipped or the fastest moving entity here to do this. So first question to you, where are we on this regulation being formulated right now if it is not with the government?
I mean, I think there's two things to say there. One is I think the US government definitely should play a role in it. The second is we may also want to build some international organization. The sense of the room is that the US government would try. There was a lot of people in favor of building some kind of national agency. People were in favor of specific proposals, like, for example, requiring licensing on certain types of AI models. There wasn't detail yet, but there was, I think, consensus around that. And I think there was warmth towards the idea that I've been pushing about having a global AI agency that might try to align all the different countries and have common plans, which I think would be useful both for the companies. They don't want to have to build different models for every country. It's very expensive and costly in terms of climate, and also good for the world if we can have the world's best thinkers and independent scientists all getting together with the corporations and the governments to make the best plan possible.
Well, that's an important point. And let's just break these two things down individually. I mean, in terms of a regulatory body, how important is it that that agency isn't simply made up of the big tech industry working in their own interests? And which other individuals would need to play a role and be part of that?
So if only the companies are involved, or even only the companies and the governments, then you certainly have a risk of the kind of thing we call greenwashing, regulatory capture, in which the big players make rules such that the small players are kept out and nothing is really served. And that's what we don't want. That's why I think we really need independent scientists to be there, to be a voice and saying, well, then that's not really going to be strong enough. So, for example, we need, I think, much more transparency about what's in the models, because the models can influence people's beliefs in the way the social media can, but in an even more subtle way. And so we need scientists to say, hey, we need more transparency about what you're doing. And we need to build new tools to fight the kinds of misinformation that people will generate with your tools. And we need more insight into how they actually work. So the scientists, I think, have to work together with the government to get the right information and build tools that help us do this.
Have you actually put yourself forward to be part of the regulatory body, Gary?
I was actually asked that yesterday. There is no regulatory body to put myself forward, but I'm willing to help. I'm spent all week in Washington talking to people and trying to make suggestions. So at least, behind the scenes, I'll make suggestions. And I would like to see this, because I think one of the most important things in the world right now is to figure out how we can make AI benefit us and not harm us. As Senator Hawley said, we could either see AI as being like the printing press, which has been pretty much a benefit to society, or like the atomic bomb, which has been a very, very mixed blessing. And we want to have the good outcome here.
So to your point of a global government structure and the importance of that, Gary, I mean, I think this was something that was raised at the G7. We heard today Rishi Sunak, other leaders talking about the need for that. But how would that actually work? Who would fund such a entity?
I mean, in the end, I think it needs to be governments. I think the companies themselves should put some money forward. If they say they want regulation and want this to be organized and rational, they should put up some of the money. And I think, philanthropists may as well. I think we ultimately, the most important thing is we want this body to be neutral and perhaps nonprofit. That requires that it be well-funded and not beholden to any particular interest.
You mentioned there that we are lacking some of the very basic fundamental tools of AI that relate a lot of it to research. And one of the most important ones is tracking misinformation. I mean, I wonder as we sit here, a year and a bit out from the US election, what threat specifically that will pose to the US elections and whether we can actually get guardrails in place in time for that.
I honestly don't know if we can get them in place in time. It's going to be an uphill struggle to do that. And I'm very concerned about the 2024 election. And that was part of what first made me think about this set of issues for the last year, really. We are going to need to think about the policies we have. We're going to need to think about new tools. The AI that's very popular right now is very good at learning about the statistics about how different words relate to each other. And so it's kind of like autocomplete on steroids. It pastiches different things together, but doesn't really understand truth. And so we really need new tools, which we need to develop quickly, that are more grounded in understanding how to reason about a set of known facts and see whether something is consistent with those facts. And that's a heavy lift. I don't know that we can get it done by 2024, but we need to start trying.
We absolutely do. Truth is a pretty important part of any election process. Gary, I'm glad you are one of those in the driving seat, though. We appreciate you giving us your thoughts on this all the way from Washington today. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, staying in the world of tech, in 2 US cases, the Supreme Court ruled online platforms are not liable for terror-related content posted by users. In the first case, the Supreme Court ruled that Twitter will not have to face accusations that it aided and abetted terrorism when it hosted tweets by the terror group ISIS. The court also dismissed a similar case against Google and its subsidiary YouTube. The outcome is a relief not only for Google, but for many websites and social media companies, urging the Supreme Court not to restrict their protections. Now, CNN has obtained previously unreported internal Federal Aviation Administration records on last summer's air travel chaos in the US, when thousands of flights were delayed or cancelled, leaving passengers stranded. They show that while the Biden administration publicly hammered airlines for the problems, behind the scenes, the FAA officials were well aware that their own agency also bore responsibility. Well, CNN's aviation correspondent, Pete Montaigne, joins us now from Washington with the details. And Pete, I imagine airlines are feeling somewhat vindicated today because, they were charged with, the blame for all of this in the first instance. So how much does the FAA have to answer for here?
Well, the blame game is pretty interesting here, Christina, because the FAA is not totally vindicated. The airlines are not totally vindicated here, but we do have this tranche of new documents that really lays out the blame game in much more detail than we have ever understood before. And CNN uncovered in hundreds of pages of documents obtained from the federal government. These are messages and emails internally at the Federal Aviation Administration that this problem was really owned by the FAA, but not in public. In fact, in public, the FAA and the Biden administration was really pointing fingers at the airlines. Think back to last summer. We're talking 55,000 flight cancellations between Memorial Day and Labor Day, 500,000 flights delayed. And as that was taking place, repeatedly the Biden administration said, this is on airlines. They emptied out the cabinet during the pandemic, and now they're racing to keep up with the amount of travelers coming back. But what we were able to uncover in these documents is that at one
key air traffic control facility run by the Federal Aviation Administration in Florida. It is known as Jacksonville Center. There were 200 shifts that were short-staffed over a 7-week period, and that led to 4,600 flights being delayed in the state of Florida. That accounted for 1 in every 10 delays during that 7-week period. So this is completely new, previously unreported information that really puts into the limelight the FAA's onus here. And it's especially important now because Memorial Day, the unofficial start of the summer travel season, is right around the corner. We're talking only a week out, and so many people are planning to travel. In fact, AAA says the numbers on Memorial Day weekend, so the weekend after next, could be 11% higher than what they were back in 2019 before the pandemic, when air travel was really hitting huge records. So this is really, really critical right now. And the FAA is also warning that these controller shortages, is trying to own up to them in a way leading up to this summer. That could cause delays at some airports, like in New York, to increase by 45%. So we're learning a lot here from the past, and it's really important to put the spotlight on this because the FAA says there will still be problems again this summer. So we're going to roll out this reporting tonight on Anderson Cooper 360, 8 p.m. Eastern Time, and really lay this out for folks so they understand just how bad the problem was, and also lay out for folks how the FAA is addressing this so this potentially does not happen in the future, although we know there is a potential for problems on the horizon again this summer. Christina?
Important reporting, Pete, especially, as you say, at this juncture with the busy summer we have ahead. Appreciate it. Thank you.
Anytime.
All right, still to come tonight. It looks like a puddle in the mud, but the Colombian army thinks it may be a major clue to help them find 4 children missing in the Amazon jungle.
We are surrounded by sea, so if there's any disaster in terms of environment or sustainability wise, then Maldives hit really bad. So this will be a good opportunity for people to learn what they can do.
It's very important because the islands, the ocean, the fish, the whole marine biodiversity is connected to the coral reefs.
Today, we live in an unpredictable environment, and news races around the world at breakneck speed.
We've heard those stories, but I've never heard it from somebody who's actually seen it. I have seen it.
My show brings you the latest news and top news makers. Can you give us any more insight into the line in the sand?
How do you expect Russia to be taken seriously?
These are real issues that affect so many people around the world.
Nuclear security is indispensable. We are playing with fire.
Amanpour, weeknights on CNN.
Playmakers are all around Africa. All-star athletes, record breakers, game changers. I'm Larry Madowo, and this is African Voices Playmakers.
Current and former pro rugby players making plays beyond the pitch.
I've always had a dream of opening up a restaurant. That is the ultimate goal. That's going to be my legacy.
African Voices Playmakers, only on CNN, in association with Glow. On the next Living Golf, soak up the sun in California and marvel at the iconic course, Pebble Beach.
This course is such a bucket list for so many golfers.
Where the greats shine and legends are made. In the heart of Los Angeles, visit the A-list attraction, Wilshire Country Club.
I mean, what a location.
And link up with rising star Lilia Vu.
It was nice to see hard work pay off.
Living Golf, Saturday on CNN, in association with Gulf Saudi.
U.S. immigration authorities say they're seeing a significant drop in migrant encounters on America's southern border after the end of Title 42. The policy allowed the U.S. to quickly deport people without an asylum hearing, using the pandemic as justification. Since it expired last Friday, federal immigration authorities say migrant encounters fell by around 70% over a 48-hour period. Authorities are also ramping up deportation efforts, with Homeland Security deporting more than 11,000 migrants since Title 42 expired. Now, the Colombian army thinks it has found what could be a significant clue in its search for 4 children missing after a plane crash in the Amazon jungle. Search and rescue officials say this appears to be a small footprint, and they think it could be from one of the children. The children, aged 13, 9, 4 and 11 months, have been missing now for more than 2 weeks. Officials confirm the bodies of 3 adults have been pulled from the plane wreckage. Well, Stefano Pozzoban has been tracking this story for us from the Colombian capital city, Bogota. Stefano, 18 days now and still no confirmation of the children. I mean, how much belief is there at this point that the children are still alive?
There's no confirmation, which means that hopes are still alive, Christina. Of course, until we would hear a definitive breakthrough. Well, everybody here in Colombia is really hoping that those kids will be found safe and alive, regardless of the odds. And just hours ago, the Colombian military said that they have supported the ongoing mission with 50 extra commandos to help track down the kids. But it's really frantic hours here in Colombia with the search and rescue operation going on in the jungle, and people here in Bogota praying and wishing for the best.
A desperate search continues, but still no breakthrough. Colombian authorities are scouring the Amazon for 4 children believed to have survived the plane crash on May 1st, looking for any signs of life after nearly 3 weeks. Earlier reports that the children had been found were later dialed back. The grandfather of the kids, ages 13, 9, 4 and 11 months, says he's holding out hope.
They already know the jungle, and after that accident, maybe they are hiding. They hide. Maybe they don't realize that they are looking for them. They are children. But we hope that they are alive and have access to water, because water is life.
The plane had taken off from the remote area of Araraquara, bound for San Jose del Guaviare. Details of the crash remain fuzzy, but the same plane crashed in the same region of the jungle less than 2 years ago, according to the Colombian Civil Aviation Authority. Below the dense forest canopy, rescue efforts carry on around the clock. The Colombian Armed Forces using dogs to help search for the children, following a trail of scattered debris, including hair scrunchies and a baby bottle they believe belongs to the youngest. And from above, Colombia's Air Force using loudspeakers to play messages from the kids' grandmother in their native language. In Bogota, the indigenous community is mourning those who died in the crash after it was announced on Thursday that the bodies of 3 adults, including the pilot and the mother of the 4 children, had been recovered, and demanding answers for what had gone wrong, while the nation holds its breath, praying for the lives of the 4 young children.
And Christina, the Leslie name that you hear blasted out on the loudspeaker is the name of the oldest of those children, the 13-year-old Leslie Mutukui. Of course, the hope is that they will be found alive. And as you can see from the report, literally the whole nation is holding its breath and hoping for a positive outcome tonight. Christina.
Yeah, well, let's hope that Leslie and siblings are just hiding in the jungle, as their grandfather suggests they might be. Stefano Pozzoban, thank you very much. Now, investigators in Australia want to know why a police officer felt so threatened by a 95-year-old woman that he had to tase her. It happened Wednesday inside a nursing home south of Canberra. Police were responding to a call about a resident with a knife when great-grandmother Claire Noland didn't follow police instructions to drop the knife. An officer discharged his taser. Nowland has dementia and she is now in the hospital in critical condition.
Claire is 95 years old. She's about 5'2" and weighs all of 43 kilos. She can't walk on her own without a walking assistance. As they said, she had a walking frame or a wheelie walker. The use of a taser when a kind word was all she needed. If she was confused, which is what happens with people who have dementia, she needed kind words and assistance and help. She didn't need the force of the law, as it were.
Extraordinary. All right, still to come tonight. The Big Apple has a big problem. It's sinking. We'll look at the mission to save Manhattan next.
Whether you are a global enterprise or a business startup, Abu Dhabi connects you with the world, helping you do business faster and smarter. It's where innovation's nurtured and investment opportunities thrive. Abu Dhabi is a city where outdoor living rejuvenates and invigorates, and culture and entertainment inspires and delights. Thrive in Abu Dhabi.
Steve, bioplan. Our first stop, Bosphorus. Second stop, Karakoy.
Teşekkürler.
Thank you. Next stop, Galata. And finally, the final.
Football is more than a game. Istanbul is more than a final.
We share this place, we all belong.
Innovative, futuristic, solutions that have the potential to really change our world.
This is a fiber discovery platform where we could follow nature's blueprints for an array of properties.
Meet the scientists spearheading these inspiring ideas.
Carbon dioxide removal will be the new heavy industry that mankind has to develop.
And see how the impact of a single solution could spark a technological transformation. Bold Pursuits, Sunday on CNN.
Welcome back. The CEO and founder of luxury brand LVMH, Bernard Arnault, remains a driving force behind the nearly $500 billion company. But many wonder which of his 5 children will take the reins one day. CNN's Melissa Bell takes a look at the family dynamic and why it bears an uncanny resemblance to a certain hit TV show.
He's on the floor, Tom.
Explain to me what he's doing.
He's moseying, terrifyingly moseying. It's like if Santa Claus was a hitman.
A magnate and patriarch.
I love you, but you are not serious people.
Preparing his succession as carefully as he built his empire. Not Logan Roy,
but the real world's richest man, 74-year-old Bernard Arnault, worth more than $230 billion, having built the world's biggest luxury goods company, all the while very personally raising, educating and evaluating his 5 potential successors.
I think my group is controlled by my family. So instead of looking every day at the stock market, I look for the next 10 years.
All 5 Arnault children work for their father. 48-year-old Delphine, the chair of Christian Dior, her brother, 45-year-old Antoine, who is CEO of the holding company of Christian Dior, and the 3 children from Arnault's second marriage, 31-year-old Alexander, who's an executive vice president of Tiffany's, 28-year-old Frederick, who runs Tag Heuer, and the youngest, 24-year-old Jean, the Director of Development and Marketing at Louis Vuitton's Watches division.
C'est à la fois un père très attentif.
He is at once an attentive father, a good father, but also a merciless boss. So the children had to work hard. He has a fairly clear idea of their qualities and their weaknesses, and when the moment comes, will be able to choose.
The $500 billion LVMH dominates the world of fashion with some of its biggest names, like Christian Dior and Louis Vuitton. It was built through ruthless acquisition and, like Waystar, is diverse, with vineyards, hotels, restaurants and newspapers.
I have you beat!
But it is in the treatment of their children that the fictional and real characters diverge. Far from fostering discord, Arnault has ensured harmony, but with a cold eye on business nonetheless.
So thank you very much.
The stakes are huge. The value of the company, but also the power that it brings. Like Logan Roy, Bernard Arnault has cultivated his relationships with the powerful, acquiring a vast media empire and making LVMH a symbol in France. Its headquarters stormed by protesters only last month. But while Arnault has sought to protect his children, he's also made it clear what he expects of them.
Of course, we understand the level of responsibility that is ours. The way we see things is that my father is super healthy and going to work 10, 15, 20, 25 years. His 5 children are now working together in different parts of the group, but we're very close.
An empire carefully built and ultimately soon up for grabs, but so far without the family drama. Melissa Bell, CNN, Paris.
Now, if you can make it there, you can make it anywhere. But it seems New York has a problem of its own making, sadly. New research suggests the city is sinking, partly due to the mammoth weight of its famous skyscrapers. That could become a big problem when it comes to the risk of flooding as the world's glaciers continue to melt. And sad news from the world of music today. Andy Rourke, bassist for the English rock band The Smiths, has died after a battle with pancreatic cancer. Rourke joined The Smiths in 1982 and played alongside the band until their split in 1987. The Smiths guitarist Johnny Marr tweeted that Andy would be remembered as a gifted musician and a kind and beautiful soul. A great track. Andy Rourke was 59 years old. And it was an emotional return to public life for one of the world's most targeted writers as Salman Rushdie made a surprise appearance at the PEN America Gala. Greeted with a standing ovation, the outspoken free speech defender received an honorary award for his courage 9 months after that knife attack that almost took his life. During his speech, he honored those who rushed to his aid on that fateful day.
If it had not been for these people, I most certainly would not be standing here today. The courage that day was all theirs.
Good to see him back and standing. And thank you so much for watching tonight. Stay with CNN. We've got Quest Means Business coming up after the break.
Our mission here at CNN is that the news comes first. That's the promise of the Situation Room. Breaking news, politics, world events. We work as hard as we can to get the facts and tell the stories that matter most.
The Situation Room with Wolf Blitzer, tonight on CNN.
Today, we live in an unpredictable environment, and news races around the world at breakneck speed.
We've heard those stories, but I've never heard it from somebody who's actually seen it. I have seen it.
My show brings you the latest news and top news makers. Can you give us any more insight into the line in the sand?
How do you expect Russia to be taken seriously?
These are real issues that affect so many people around the world.
Nuclear security is indispensable. We are playing with fire.
Amanpour, weeknights on CNN.
Being a journalist is the best job in the world.
Thank you so much for doing this, sir. Appreciate it.
Happy to.
I think we have a big crisis of democracy.
Do you think the United States is headed for a recession?
I think that is where Jerome Powell is trying to drive it.
My goal is to be a voice for people watching.
Together, who asked you to do it?
I was asked.
Is Ukraine going to win this war?
Yes, of course.
Asking challenging questions of the folks who run the world. You ready?
The Lead with Jake Tapper, tonight on CNN.
Innovative, futuristic, solutions that have the potential to really change our world.
This is a fiber discovery platform where we could follow nature's blueprints for an array of properties.
Meet the scientists spearheading these inspiring ideas.
Carbon dioxide removal will be the new heavy industry that mankind has to develop.
And see how the impact of a single solution could spark a technological transformation. Bold Pursuits, Sunday on CNN.
My favorite scene in the movie wasn't in the script until very late. Let's find a scene that expresses the educational differences between Paul Bäumer, who's just left high school, and Kat is uneducated, he can't read. There's a big online archive or thousands of letters from the front. And I found part of this letter. I thought, wow, the language was beautiful. The detail of what they sent to the front, the money they saved, the people they talked about.
Am Sonntag gehe ich zum Grab.
Felix just read this letter as if he'd seen it for the first time.
Am Sonntag gehe ich zum Grab von.
And Albrecht, the way he listens and lets himself go in these emotions and this yearning for home, but on the other side, thinking he's lost it. He can never go back. It said a lot about these characters. And so I'm very proud of the simplicity of that scene.
Das habe ich nicht gewusst.
This is CNN. More people get their news from CNN than any other news source.
Stocks are falling as talks over the U.S. debt ceiling hit a snag. The Dow right now is down just under 100 points. Those are the markets, and these are the main events. G7 leaders rally around Ukraine as they meet in Japan. An exclusive interview with the Turkish president. If re-elected, he'll stick with his unorthodox economic policy, and the world's richest man looks for a successor among his children. Coming to you live from New York, it is Friday, May 19th. I'm Zain Asher in for Richard Quest, and this is Quest Means Business. Good evening. Tonight,